So welcome everyone, my name is Samuel Morin. I'm a researcher in Météo France and the CNRS based in Grenoble, France, and I've been the coordinator of the PROSNOW project. And on behalf of the project, I'm very happy to welcome you to this webinar that will address climate services relevant to ski tourism. So this webinar is carried out in collaboration with a number of other projects, in particular Blue Action, another Horizon 2020 project, and also Climateurope. And this has been organized together with the Copernicus Climate Change Service people. This webinar is intended to provide you a state of knowledge on the current and future climate change impacts on ski tourism in Europe and North America, and also existing and emerging climate services assisting in long-term planning and adaptation, and existing and emerging services addressing real-time snow management, and that PROSNOW world. This webinar is intended to last for about 3 hours altogether, with a short break in the middle. We'll try to stick to the schedule so that you can come in and out at the time where you want to attend the presentation that you targeted. And note that this webinar is also recorded so that we can actually use it and promote it after the webinar has ended. So as planned in the program, I will start with a short introduction on IPCC perspectives on ski tourism and climate change, just to set the frame of this webinar and what we are going to talk about. So for that, I will actually start with providing some figures from the 2020 International Report on Snow and Mountain Tourism that is produced every year by an expert in ski tourism named Laurent Vanat. Is an expert in the ski industry, and I will start with some figures from his report to provide some background to what we're talking about. So ski tourism is very widespread worldwide. Of course, it's not found everywhere. It's mostly in North America, Europe, Asia, including Japan, with a few other countries. So about 100 countries in the world where ski tourism exists, and there are about 2,000 ski resorts in the world. So the major destinations, the one where there is more than 1 million skiers per ski resort per year, are found in the European Alps. 80% of those large resorts are in the European Alps, 6% in Western Europe, so that's 86% altogether in Europe, and 14% in America, in particular North America. So that gives also a sense of where ski tourism is most active, and with no surprise, it's really North America and Europe that you find much of the activities for ski tourism. And in terms of skier visits per country, it's no surprise that it's about at the maximum about 55 million skiers visits per year in the major destinations. So in particular, United States of America, France, Austria, Japan, Italy, Switzerland, etc., to name a few. Those are the main players in terms of countries in the world when it comes to skiing. Altogether, there are about 400 million skier visits per year worldwide, including indoor. So that's quite a large number of skiers. And this is considered to be a mature market. So if you start with these figures from 2000 to the last year, you can see that the numbers vary more or less, but there is no widespread increase or a strong drop. It's actually quite a stable market. And there are some years already where you can find that there was a decrease for one particular year in skier visits, and that's, for example, the season 2006-2007 in winter was a particularly warm and dry winter season. So you can see that, of course, the weather conditions for a given year can have a very strong influence on the turnover of some major ski resorts and major ski destinations. So of course, we know that snow is the main ingredient for ski tourism, and because we know that snow is strongly related to the climate system, it's no surprise that the climate conditions are exerting a strong influence on operations of ski tourism. Before going about and giving some information from IPCC reports, I will just recap that the IPCC is an international panel of experts working on climate change, and it's working under the auspice of the World Meteorological Organization, WMO, and UNEP, the UN Environmental Programme. So it's an intergovernmental body that provides reports, so in the form of assessments on the scientific basis of climate change, impacts and future risks, and options for adaptation and mitigation. So the IPCC doesn't produce new science. It really brings together and combines information from published literature to assess the impacts of climate change on a number of sectors in particular. And if we go straight to the latest IPCC report, the one that was issued in September 2019, just about a year ago, and if we look at the trends for snow cover in the summary for policymakers of this report, we can read that in nearly all high mountain areas, the depth, extent, and duration of snow cover have declined over recent decades, especially at lower elevation. And if we look at the future projections, we can also read that in high mountain areas, the decreases in low elevation mean winter snow depth compared to a reference period in early 21st century, or likely 10 to 40% by the mid-century, 2031 to 2050, with high confidence. And for the end of the century, this decrease is likely 10 to 40% for a low emission scenario and up to 50 to 90% for a high emission scenario. So we can see here that there is already a declining trend for natural snow cover at low elevation, and this is likely to continue in the future, and it doesn't depend on the emissions for the next 20 to 30 years, because this is really due to the ongoing climate change that is not related to our current emission reductions or potential reductions. But for the end of the century, there is a very different scenario if emissions are reduced considerably, with achieving almost neutral carbon emissions by 2050. In that case, the situation is intended to stabilize at the mid-century, or a further drop in terms of natural snow cover by the end of the century in the high emission scenarios. So this, of course, has consequences for ski tourism. And if we go back to almost the first IPCC report, that was actually the second one that was issued in '95, in the working group 2 of the IPCC report from '95, the one that works on impacts and adaptation. There was a dedicated chapter on climate change on mountain regions, and the first author at that time was Martin Beniston from Switzerland. And in the winter tourism section of that particular report, we could see that it was already predicted that because of the reduction in snow cover due to warming temperature, this could have considerable socioeconomic disruptions in communities that have invested heavily in the skiing industry. And this report already mentioned at that time the fact that of course, there could be new opportunities in the summer season, so talk about diversification of tourism activities in the mountains, but also the fact that investment in new technologies at that time, such as snowmaking equipment, could be a way to limit these impacts as long as the climatic conditions would remain within appropriate bounds. So that was about 25 years ago now that those statements were made, and actually we are still in the situation where we could almost make the same statements now. Of course, in this chapter, and that is still true, it was explicitly mentioned that artificial snowmaking often raises environmental concern, and that's something, of course, that has to be taken into account where we consider ski tourism and climate change. Now, if we go to a much more recent IPCC report, and that's the special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees. That report was released in October 2018, just about 2 years ago. And in this report, in the chapter 3, the chapter that deals with the impacts of 1.5 degrees global warming on natural and human systems, there is a section for tourism. And in this section for tourism, of course, we can read that the studies from a number of countries projects decreased reliability of ski areas that are dependent on natural snow, increased snowmaking requirements, etc. So the same kind of statements saying that the snow conditions are becoming less favorable for ski tourism. And in terms of scientific literature that is used to address those impacts, it was mentioned that studies that omit snowmaking do not reflect the operating realities of most ski areas and overestimate impacts at 1.5 to 2 degrees. So what I'm saying here is based on this report that if we want to assess the impact of climate change on ski tourism, we really have to take into account the operation conditions, the operating principles of ski resorts, that is accounting for snow management, and in particular grooming and snowmaking. Now if we go to once again to this latest IPCC report that was released last September, in the summary for policymakers, so that is the high-level document that goes to the governments after the IPCC process is ended for a given report. There was a mountain chapter in this special report, and that's also why you can see mountain-related and mountain-specific results from this report brought up to the level of the summary for policymakers, which is usually not the case for IPCC reports. But in this particular case, regarding past changes, we have statements saying that tourism and recreation, including ski and leisure tourism, have also been negatively impacted in many mountain regions, and the fact that in some places artificial snowmaking has reduced negative impacts on ski tourism with medium confidence. So that's one of the statements from this latest IPCC report. Now, if you look for the future projections, it says that, of course, high mountain tourism, recreation, and cultural assets are projected to be negatively affected by future cryospheric changes. That is quite obvious if we go back to the past change, to the future change in snow cover, for instance. And there is a statement that goes with current snowmaking technologies are projected to be less effective in reducing risks to ski tourism in a warmer climate in most part of Europe, North America, and Japan, in particular at 2 degrees global warming and beyond. So as you can see here, it's quite a precise statement related to ski tourism in a summary for policymakers of an IPCC report, but that's really due to the fact that this report was focusing on the ocean and cryosphere in a changing climate. Quite importantly as well, there is a statement in this summary for policymakers that refers to integrated water management and relating also to the multi-purpose storage and release of water from reservoirs to be quite with high potential to support water resource management, with of course consideration of potentially negative impacts to ecosystem and communities. So in a way, this of course we know that water resources are critical in the mountain regions, and water is needed for snowmaking, of course, and so that's something that is handled here. And the report also mentioned that diversification of tourism activities throughout the year supports adaptation in high mountain economies, and that's something that is quite critical to the future of ski tourism and to mountain resorts more generally. Last point I'm making here, investments in education and capacity building. So in terms of increasing knowledge and tools that are used for ski tourism, including regional climate information, can be used to basically increase the long-term capability for different economic sectors, and of course including ski tourism here. So today we're going to talk about climate services relevant to ski tourism, and I just have a slide here to summarize what are climate services. According to the Global Framework for Climate Services under the WMO, climate services provide climate information to help individuals and organizations make climate-smart decisions. And based on a number of data and knowledge, I'm not going into details, climate services are meant to equip decision makers in climate-sensitive sectors with better information to help society adapt to climate variability and change. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about today, talking about climate services at a wide range of timescales, addressing ski tourism in particular. Before giving the floor to the next speaker, I will quickly introduce the speakers for today. So that was my introductory talk. Then immediately after me will be Chiara Cagnazzo from ECMWF Copernicus Climate Change, giving an introduction about C3S sector information system and ski tourism. Soon afterwards, Guylain Dubois from Rumble will introduce one of the latest data sets that was released through Copernicus Climate Change Services, dealing specifically with mountain tourism and ski tourism indicators. Then we'll move to North America with Daniel Scott, very knowledgeable scholar working on climate change and ski tourism with a perspective in North America. And then we'll have a talk about a dedicated climate service addressing long-term climate change impacts in French mountain regions called ClimSnow. Then we have a short break if time allows, and then we'll move to a general introduction about PROSNOW, which I will take care of, followed by a live demo of the PROSNOW user-facing tool, so putting PROSNOW to practice in a way. And then we'll have a talk given by two colleagues from Scandinavia, from the Blue Action project. They will introduce the Snow app prototype from a climate service co-designed for ski resorts in northern Finland. That's part of the Blue Action project. Then Michi Lenning from Switzerland, EPFL and VSL SLF Davos, will talk about the future of Swiss snow and an outlook on consequences. Judith Köbel from UNN Research in Austria will talk about the market for climate services in the ski tourism sector with some results from an Austrian case study. And then Guylain Dubois will wrap up and share a short open discussion and drawing to conclusions of these workshops. So as you can see, it's quite dense and packed, but we try to put into it the best knowledge and the best tools that are available currently in terms of climate services for the ski tourism sector. So I hope you enjoy it. And with that, I want to give the floor to Chiara for a next talk. Thank you for your attention.